That tin of tuna in your cupboard, the lunchbox staple you buy without a second thought, almost certainly is real fish. Independent European testing says the vast majority of UK canned tuna is correctly labelled. This isn't a fake fish story. It's a how it got caught story, and in some ways, that's worse. The biggest tuna brands in this country have repeatedly scored worst on independent sustainability rankings, while some supermarket-owned labels scored the best. Today I'm checking 7 tins against that record, then showing 2 that consistently rank top. The nation's best-selling tuna brand isn't one of the 2 good ones. Quick standard before we start, because I want to correct something clearly before it spreads any further. Peer-reviewed testing across Europe, including UK samples, found under 8% of canned tuna was mislabeled at all, and where it did happen, it was usually one real tuna species standing in for another cheaper one, not some completely different fish replacing it entirely. So this isn't really about whether it's real fish sitting inside that tin waiting to be opened for lunch. It's about how that fish got into the tin in the first place, and how much of the tin is actually fish once you drain away the liquid sitting on top of it. Was it caught on a pole and line, one fish at a time, or scooped up in a massive net set around a floating device that also traps sharks, rays and turtles along with it? That's the real standard running through this entire list, and it has nothing to do with whether the label is lying to you about which fish is actually inside the tin. Number 7, a budget own-label tuna chunks in brine tin, the cheapest one sitting on the shelf that week. Bought purely because it's the lowest price per tin, no brand loyalty involved at all, just a hand reaching for the bottom shelf where the small plain tins sit stacked 3 deep. Cheap doesn't mean the label tells you everything you'd want to know before buying it. Budget lines are typically skipjack chunks with noticeably less on-pack transparency about catch method than the premium ranges sitting one shelf up at a noticeably higher price per tin. The lowest price on the shelf often comes with the least information about how the fish actually got caught in the first place, which is a trade most shoppers never realise they're making at the till. Cheapest tin, least transparent label, sitting side by side on the same shelf. That's the baseline problem running through this whole list. The next one is a well-known European discounter's own brand that Greenpeace has specifically named in its own published reporting. Number 6, Lidl's NiXe tinned tuna, a name printed in plain letters on a plain label, sitting on the discounter's own shelf. A familiar discounter own brand, bought week after week for value without a second thought ever given to where the fish actually came from or how it ended up in the net. When NiXe first entered Greenpeace UK's Tinned Tuna League table, it was reported that close to 80% of the tuna was caught using FAD methods, the huge nets set around floating devices that snare far more than just tuna swimming nearby. Worth checking whether that figure has moved since that survey. Discount pricing and Greenpeace's own published findings pointed in the exact same uncomfortable direction at the exact same time, which is rarely a good sign for a shopper trying to do the right thing. Named, ranked, and sitting near the bottom, according to the actual people who did the ranking themselves. That's a discounter doing it under its own brand name. The next one is one of the UK's biggest supermarkets, caught doing something remarkably similar under a cheaper label of its own. Number 5, Tesco's old budget tuna line, Oriental and Pacific. This one appeared on shelves shortly after Tesco had publicly pledged to clean up its entire tuna sourcing operation, sitting quietly on a lower shelf, while the headline brand tins sat above it, looking far more reassuring. It's genuinely worth checking whether it's even still stocked at all today, since a lot can change over a decade of supermarket ranges being reshuffled. A public pledge and a quiet budget workaround can sit on the exact same shelf at the exact same time in the exact same store. Greenpeace publicly named this specific brand as the least sustainable tuna available on UK shelves back when it surveyed the market, caught using methods directly linked to shark, ray and turtle bycatch in the nets, animals that were never the target of the fishing trip at all. The pledge was genuinely real. So was the loophole sitting 2 shelves over from the headline promise. That's a supermarket's own quiet workaround dealt with. The next one is priced like a treat and sold at a noticeably smaller weight than the tin itself actually suggests. Number 4, a standard 160-gram tin of tuna, the exact size sitting quietly in nearly every cupboard in the country right now, stacked 2 or 3 deep behind the beans and the soup, priced and marketed as if the whole tin is simply fish, because that's what a tin of tuna is supposed to be at first glance. The tin's total weight printed in big letters, and the actual drained weight of fish you get once you tip it into a colander, are 2 completely different numbers. UK and EU labelling law requires drained weight to be disclosed separately from the net weight, and on many tins that specific number is meaningfully lower than the headline weight splashed across the front in bold print. Worth checking the exact figure on whatever's sitting in your own cupboard right now before you assume anything. Some of what you're paying tuna prices for every single week is brine, oil, or plain water. The big number on the front isn't the number that actually tells you how much fish is inside the tin. That's a value question hiding in completely plain sight. The next one is an own label supermarket brand running the same FAD fishing pattern as the discount tier already covered. Number 3, Asda's own brand tinned tuna, a major supermarket's own label range, trusted the way any big retailer's own name gets trusted, without much scrutiny applied to it at the till, sitting on the shelf in exactly the same kind of tin as everyone else's. Own label doesn't automatically mean the retailer picked the more sustainable option available to them at the time they made that decision. Asda has historically sat in the lower middle tier of Greenpeace UK's tinned tuna sustainability table, behind Sainsbury's, Waitrose and M&S, worth confirming exactly where it sits on the current, most up-to-date version of that table before assuming this still applies. Not every major UK supermarket made the same sustainability commitment at the same pace as its rivals did. Same size store, same trust built into the logo, a genuinely different ranking sitting quietly underneath it. That's one major supermarket lagging behind its rivals on this particular measure. The next 2 are the biggest tuna brand names in the entire country, and they've fared even worse in the same rankings. Number 2, Prince's Tinned Tuna, one of the 2 biggest branded tuna names on UK shelves, a familiar sight in nearly every cupboard in the country, sitting on the shelf next to its biggest rival, looking every bit as trustworthy. Brand recognition and sustainability rating are simply not the same thing, no matter how long a brand has been sitting on the shelf. Greenpeace UK has reported Prince's sourcing roughly 3/4 of its tuna using FAD methods in past surveys, and separately noted less on-label transparency about species and catch method than some of its direct competitors on the very same shelf. Worth checking the current figure before assuming it still holds true today. A genuinely huge, trusted brand name can still carry one of the worst sustainability ratings in its entire category. Second biggest name on the shelf, second worst rating, sitting in the exact same table. That's the second biggest brand in the country dealt with. The final one is the biggest brand of all, and it's fared even worse in the identical rankings. Number 1, John West Tinned Tuna. The UK's biggest tuna brand, a name that's been sitting on shelves since 1857. One of the single most recognisable seafood names in the entire country. Printed on tins in nearly every corner shop and supermarket from one end of Britain to the other. The biggest, most trusted name has repeatedly come last, not first, on independent sustainability rankings, and that's genuinely worth sitting with for a second. Greenpeace UK reported John West sourcing as little as 2% of its tuna sustainably in one survey, despite a public 2011 pledge to reach 100% sustainable sourcing by 2016. And it's worth checking exactly how far that figure has actually moved since that promise was first made public. Decades of shelf presence and a household name printed on the front don't guarantee the best sourcing practices sitting behind the label. Sometimes it's the exact opposite of what you'd assume walking past it in the aisle. The most trusted name in British tuna has been the least trusted name in ocean conservation circles for years now. A genuinely strange gap to sit between two things people assume go together. If the two biggest brands in the entire country have fared this badly on record, here's what the two brands doing it properly actually look like on the very same shelf. Okay, 7 tins down, and I want to be genuinely clear about something before we move on. None of them are secretly a different fish hiding inside the tin, and none of them broke any labelling law by doing what they did. What they share is a fishing method question and a drained weight question that most shoppers never once think to check before putting the tin in the trolley. Here are two that consistently answer both of those questions properly, year after year. Better one, Sainsbury's own brand tinned tuna. Sainsbury's has repeatedly ranked at or near the top of Greenpeace UK's tinned tuna table over the years, reported as selling only pole and line caught, MSC certified tuna across its entire range. Worth confirming that certification is still printed on the current tin before you buy it, since ranges do occasionally shift. This is what the same exact category looks like when a retailer actually followed through on its own promise instead of quietly working around it 2 shelves over from the headline claim. Better 2, Waitrose or Marks & Spencer own brand tinned tuna. Both have consistently ranked at the very top of Greenpeace UK's rankings over the years, reported as 100% pole and line caught and MSC certified, extending even to prepared products like sandwiches and salads made using the exact same fish, sourced the exact same way. Same fish counter, same country, a genuinely different fishing method sitting quietly behind the tin, whichever one you pick up. This was never really about 7 bad brands secretly hiding a different fish inside the tin, whatever the title of a video like this might suggest at first glance. It's about how that fish actually got caught and how much of the tin's weight is genuinely fish once you drain away everything else. 2 questions most shoppers never once check standing in the aisle. The same brand size versus practice gap, where the biggest name on the shelf turns out to have the worst independent rating, and the same drained weight question buried in small print show up across other tinned and packaged fish, not just tuna. Once you learn to check sustainability rankings and drained weight instead of trusting the size of the name printed across the front, the same exact gap starts showing up throughout the entire tinned fish aisle. Tin after tin, brand after brand.